Xena was trying to get into longboarding. It's a type of skateboard, but it's a little bit longer and you can go down bigger hills and go faster. So we started slow, and then she was like, what about that hill? And she went all the way up to the top, and I was like, oh, all right, we're going from the top.
I'll be gone, like I said.
Actually, I remember being in the ambulance and them taking off my clothes, and I was like, fuck, what's going on? Why are you taking my clothes off? And then the doctor there was super nice. The nurses there were super nice. I remember that because they were just like, oh, it's okay, sweetie, we're just doing this or whatever. It's been a year. It happened September 24th of 2017. You know, I didn't have family that could come to the rescue. I was very independent. I relied mostly on myself. Growing up in Dollar Bay was actually surprisingly cool. It was just a huge sense of community. And that's probably why community is so important to me, because I got a taste of that and I really loved it.
I'm trying to think. I don't remember things very well. She's the one with the brain injury. I'm the one that doesn't remember things.
But because I remember stuff, they also said, you know, it's a good sign because you weren't out of your mind, I guess, or like you weren't passed out for too long, so that's better for cognitive function later. And then the neuropsychologist came in and was like, you know, with cases like this, you know, blood in the brain, it can get complicated. And we were like, what? No one said that. What do you mean? And she's like, they didn't tell you anything? And I was like, nothing.
Later, Alicia, her friend, told me that I seemed really calm and she didn't think anything had happened. And then they showed up and she was like bleeding all over her face. It looked really bad.
I've had a personality change, sort of, because I was always kind of a control freak, but I am way more of a control freak now. Like this morning, I was just trying to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and I could not figure out where the peanut butter was, and I know where it is because I planned the whole pantry. I was into photography, and I still am. I just don't have a camera. I had to sell my camera, but I still absolutely love it. And then editing it is just probably my favorite part, actually. I think I like editing because it comes from that like writer's space. The editing process is my like, what's the word for it? It's like, it starts with an S. Solitude, right? So I'm like in my place of solitude and I don't have to be anxious. But poetry is totally different than that. I tried to make a system, or I tried to like be strategic about it, and you just can't. Like, what I write is just, I throw it up on the page and then somehow refine that and make it into something cooler. Your poetry doesn't get better unless you write shitty poetry. So that is so hard for me because I like to draft and draft and draft. And it's super personal. I can separate myself when I'm doing graphic design. I can separate myself when I'm doing photography because I'm looking at other people. I can't do that with poetry. You know everything about me when I read my poem to you. So I am very strategic. I'm very type A personality. Like, I need things in a certain way. And then Ben is more just kind of go with it, you know, we'll figure it out, or like everything's fine. Like, I'll be like, when are you getting home? And he's like, 5, maybe, I don't know. I'll check. And I'm like, I need to know because I need to plan my life around like getting us home.
I would describe myself as improbable. A lot of things about me don't really make that much sense. And Xena's very much the opposite. She likes things to be orderly and going somewhere, and sometimes it's kind of fun.
It feels like 5 years of a relationship crunched into one, basically, because we just have experienced so much together.
So after the head injury, she couldn't really support herself on her own. And I was kind of the person that took that over.
He also felt very guilty for what happened to me because he was longboarding with me, which is natural. Like, you are there, you feel like you could have prevented it somehow.
Well, she turned around and asked me, what if I get hit by a car? And I said, I don't know, we'll deal with it when that happens. And she said, all right.
When you have something wrong with you or you have a health problem, you can't fix it, you can't control it, you can't say, no, I'm gonna feel good today. You just can't.
A little bit after the accident, she and I had a relatively medium fight.
You know, when I was starting to feel better at the end, I had to push him and I had to question him. I had to say, why are you here? Because if you're here because you feel guilty, I need you to leave and I can figure it out. But if you're here because you want to be here, then feel free, stay. I appreciate it. I want you here.
But it means that we know we can work through a lot of stuff. There wasn't really a honeymoon phase, so you just kind of had to jump into it and get really close.
You know, because we started off like really demanding honesty, it's always been that way. We've always been completely honest. I mean, 60% honest, right? You can't be 100% honest all the time. But on the really important things, we're very honest. I don't have a good long-term memory anymore. So there's like two things, or two memories that I really love. He had said something to me, and I can't remember exactly what he had said, but it was so like giving and honest and beautiful that I just like cried in the middle of the restaurant. And it was so him to say something like that, and it was so a testament to the trials of our relationship for him to say that, and it was something, you know, like he would be there for me, but in a much more beautiful way.
I remember she was on the hospital bed and had all the wires hooked up and everything, and she wanted me to cuddle with her, so I like squeezed in on this tiny hospital bed, and she looked over and was like, are you sure you're comfortable? And I remembered how awesome it was that she said that, because like she has a brain injury and she's hurting and she's in the hospital and she's worried about if I was comfortable or not.
And then the other memory is just yesterday when he came back with the cars that we financed. He knows how controlled I am about everything, and that includes my looks. And so I really like to look good. And so one of like the first 4 things he said about the benefits of the car, he's like, now you get to dress cute, Xena, and you don't have to be worried about the bike and getting wet. And I just like cried because he totally understood that is something that I think about. I do think about that sometimes. I do think about what my life would look like. I only do it when I'm really frustrated about my past, actually. Because I want to change things that I can't change. And so I'm like, well, what would it look like if I didn't grow up this way, or if I didn't have this accident, or if whatever, you know, what ifs. And I have no idea. I don't know. I don't get past that, really, because I can only think about that person that I was right before, and that person wasn't ready for graduation and wasn't ready for a job and didn't have perspective and just wasn't, she was grown up, but she wasn't grown up enough. And so who that would be now, I have no idea. What do we like to do together? I don't know.
Snuggle.
Mostly cuddle. Yeah. Like,
Eat food.
eat food. We are, what would you call it? We're like sloths, kind of. Or like bears. I don't know. We hibernate as soon as we have the chance, and then just eat a bunch of food, basically.
don't think bears hibernate every day.